Welcome to Lab 25 Validations. Now you must be wondering that why am I discussing about validations again? Because already in Lab 8 we have discussed about validations. We have discussed about validations using data annotation. So if you remember right, in Lab 8 I had shown you that basically how you can use this system.componentModel.data annotations and how you can do validations. But from Lab 8 till Lab 24, we have changed our complete client code into Angular. So what has happened is the validations are firing on the server side, but we are getting no messages on the client side. So in other words, for example, if I go and put a proper record, like let's say Raju and I0, this one and this. So if it is a proper record, the validations let the record go in, and you can see that I can see the entry here. And if I go and try to just go and add the customer, what happens is the server side is disallowing me, or the server side validations are firing, but on the client side I'm not getting any kind of message. So in other words, now we need some kind of a communication mechanism between our web API and Angular to ensure that this communication happens. So for example, if you just run this program in a debug mode, and if you click on add customer, so you can see that already I have ran the program in a debug mode. So you can see that this model state is not valid, right? So you can see that the model state is false at this moment. So what happens is he just comes in here, and then after that he does not go and add the value to the table. So that is right. But you can see that he just exits out and shows me the customer collection back again. So what I want now is that, when I click on add customer, and if the model state is not valid, I would like to send the errors from the model state to Angular. So how do I go about doing that? Now, in order to send this model state object back to Angular, we need to understand how model state is structured internally. So if you see the model state object, at the top we have model state, right? And inside the model state we have keys collection. Now what is this keys collection? In this keys collection, it tells you that which are the properties on which you have put validation. So you can see here that we have three fields here: customer amount, customer code, and customer name, on which the validations are applied, right? And for every field, I can have multiple validation errors. So you can see here that, okay, this keys collection has the fields, and for each one of these keys, I can have multiple errors collection inside this values here. So if you look at the hierarchy is at the top we have model state. Inside the keys we have the fields, and for every field or for every property in the values, we have an entry saying which are the validation errors. So model state, keys, and then values. Now how do we go and take this complex structure, convert it into JSON, and send it to Angular? So definitely we have to make this bit simple, right? We cannot send this complex structure like this. If we send this complex structure like this to Angular, we would have tough time writing code on the client side. So somehow we have to take this object and flatten it off. Okay. So in other words, if I can take this complex hierarchy, and if I can just flatten this object into something like this. So we will just go ahead here and create a class called as error. And in this class, I will just have the list of error messages from the model state. Okay. So over here we will have a list of, so must be we can just create a property here. So this will just have a list of error messages in a string format. Okay. So let us make this as errors because it is more of plural, right? Great. So now let me close this solution explorer here. Okay. So now if the model state is valid, it is fine. But if the model state is not valid, else we would like to go and create the object of this error here, right? And we would like to go and add all the errors into this collection here, right? So I'm going to go and create object of this errors here. And after this, what we'll do is we will loop through all the model state collection. So all the things what is there in the model state. So you can see here we are looping through each one of those model states, and for each model state we are looping through all the errors and adding it to the errors collection. So we are adding it to the errors collection. We are not interested in getting the fields at this moment. So what we have done in short is we have flattened the hierarchy. So the hierarchical model what we had, where we had a model state and every model state has fields and then fields has errors, we have just taken all the errors and put it into a simple string collection, so that we can display this collection on the screen on the HTML UI in JSON format. Okay, great. And this error collection we will return. ERR. Great. Now we have an absurd situation here. The situation is as follows. If the model state is valid, we are saying return a list of customers collection. If the model state is not valid, we are saying return errors. But at this moment, what is happening is we are returning list of customer. So we can see that we are getting a typecasting error here. He says that I cannot convert this error to list of customer, right? So what we'll do for now is, I know that there are lots of questions which will come to your mind saying that saying around performance, right? But at this moment, to make this code working, we will return object here. I do understand a lot of people would think about casting, uncasting, and the performance issues. So we'll address that later on. But at this moment, you know what the situation demands is that, okay, if everything is valid, then we would like to return a customers collection, right? If everything is not valid, we would like to return a errors collection. But said and done again, you know, we need to do some more modifications, especially for the for the Angular code to work. If you see at this moment, this add function here, or this post method here, I'll say rather, is called by this $scope.add method, right? So from here we are actually going and invoking the post, and in the post we are in the post return, or in the success, we are getting the collection. Okay. Now the problem is that if you look at the success code, right, it says that he's expecting always a customers collection. But now you can see that we have situations here where sometimes he will get a customers collection and sometimes he will get a errors collection, right? So in other words, here there should be some kind of an if condition or something, you know, where he can say, okay, if everything is good, then he would go and return a customers collection, right? Okay. Or else he will actually go and set errors, right? So even on the Angular code side, we should have that mechanism, where he can identify saying that, okay, this is these are the errors and these are proper data, right? Now you must be wondering that, can't we go and use something called as errors? If you say the way we have something called as dot success, in the same way we also have something called as error. But remember that that error is for errors which are technical. For example, the site not found, or there is an internet connection, or some kind of an internal server error. But when you're talking about business errors, right, the validation errors which I've just filled, you need to handle that in the success, right? So we need some kind of a situation, some kind of a flag or something which, by which, the Angular code can understand that these are now errors and these are proper data, right? So what I'm going to do here is, over here, I will go and say, okay, So public class, I will go and create one more class here saying client data. So I'll go and create one more class here called as client data, and in this class we will have one field here which identifies that is this situation valid or not, and the other property of this client data would be data. So data. So basically by using this class, what we can say is, okay, here is the client data which is coming from the server side, and in this, if the flag is valid, that means it's a customer's collection. If this is valid flag is false, that means this is an errors collection. Okay, so in other words, the change what we need to do now here is we'll say we'll go and create the object of client data, right? So client data, and in this what we'll do is we'll say if you're going from here, then this data is valid is false, right? And the client data at this moment will be the errors collection, and I will say return data. Okay, must be okay, return data, or else if he is returning from here, then this data is valid, right? And this customer's collection will go inside this data. So by using this flag now, I can help Angular understand that this data is valid or not, and depending on that he can take up actions. So now on the Angular code side, I will say something like this. I will say, okay, if the data is valid, right? Okay, if the data is valid, then go and set whatever comes in the data property. Okay, so whatever comes in the data property to the customer's collection. But in case it is not valid, so if you say here if and then else, in case it does not come, in case there are errors, then I would like to go and create one more property here called as errors here. Okay, $scope dot errors. Later on, I'm going to create one or two videos, where we will go and clean up this code, clean up this mess. Because if you see now at this moment, this customer view model has become very lousy. In other words, it has the model data, it has the functions which are calling the server, right? So it's all mixed up at this moment. So we'll see how to clean up this. At this moment, let us try to go and complete this module. Okay, so here it goes. So you can see if the data is valid, then this goes in, right? Else I will say that go and set the errors. So I'll say here, okay, go and set the errors. Great. So let us go and build this project. Now, if this error collection is filled here, right, we need to go and display this error collection on the UI, right? So what I'll do is at this moment, just below our data entry form, right, I'm going to go and loop through all the errors. So you can see here, I'm creating an li tag, a li HTML tag, and I'm displaying all the error description inside the li tag. So whatever are these errors, so I'm looping through all the errors, and we are displaying all the error collection, the error description. That means all the errors what we have here. So So what is the property here? The property, it is just a string, right? So so you can see here I'm just going and looping through all the errors and I'm displaying that error over here. We don't have any property, it is just a string, right? Great. So depending on situation, he fills the errors, or depending on situation, he goes and fills my customer table, right? So let us see if this works or not. So I'm going to go and do a control F5. So there are applications running. So if I say add customer, you can see that I can see all the errors, but the errors are not seen in a proper format. You can see that it says customer code field is required, and then it says customer name field is required, right? But it says all in one sentence. We would like to actually go and display them in different lines, right? So why is this happening? Actually, this is happening because if you see at this moment, our error class has the data in the errors. Okay, so in other words, we have the data, right? We have this data here in which we are setting an error object, and inside this error object we have the errors collection. So and at the client side, what we are doing is we are setting only on the data, right? That's why it is shown in a very weird manner. It is shown in actually a JSON manner. So what I'll do is I'll go and say, okay, set it to the errors collection, right? So that should fix it up. So I'm going to go and again reload it. So now if I say add customer, you can see that all the errors are seen. Now one of the things which should come to your mind is that why do I see an empty error entry here? You know, that is seen because, you know, in the amount I'm putting a non-numeric value, I'm just putting null. So it is, you know, if any kind of numeric data type, the data annotations actually fire up an error. So you can see here, when I remove this, you know, that goes off. So this entry, this extra entry, what you see over here comes because of the numeric validation. Because if you see at this moment, our customer class here expects a decimal, right? So if any kind of data type error comes in, he actually goes and puts this kind of an entry, but that can be fixed up by saying that this is numeric, etc. But yes, so that one extra error message or the empty message is coming because we are trying to set nothing to customer amount. Okay, but we can see now our code is working. So if I just do like this, it says customer code field is required. If I say add customer, it says you should match with a proper regular expression. And if we go and give the proper thing, you know, it makes an entry to the database and shows me the entry here. Great. So all our server side validations are now working. They are now compatible with our Angular code, and we are able to you know, show them on the screen as well, right? Nice. So this is all nice, but there is one big issue here, and the issue is regarding performance. At this moment, all the error validations are firing on the server side. So I have to literally hit across the seas or wherever my server is, get all the validation errors, and then come back and display it on the browser. It would be great if we can enable client-side validation, you know, wherein the client-side validations fire and we don't hit the server unnecessarily, right? So let us go and see that how we can do validations using Angular on the client side. Now Angular uses HTML5 validation attributes internally. Okay, so if you look at HTML5, there are some new validation attributes which have been introduced. For example, let us say that you have this text box here called as customer name. So what you can really do is you can go and say required on this. So basically you can go and just say required. Okay, and what will happen is, you know, this customer name has to be filled by the end user, or else he won't be able to submit this form. Okay, so there are lots of attributes like this which have been introduced in HTML5. For example, if I want to describe, or if I want to specify a max length to an element, or let us say if I want to go and specify a regular expression on an element. So I will not go through the HTML5 validation attributes at this moment, but you can see on the screen I have displayed those validation attributes, so you can just run through them. It's pretty easy. But what my main goal here is to go and show you how Angular utilizes these HTML5 attributes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and put required field attribute on customer name as well as on the customer code. Okay, and let us see that how Angular utilizes them to do validations. Now, any kind of validations actually happen on the form. So you can see that we have this form tag here, and all the elements or all the input elements belong to this form, right? So the first thing Angular expects is that he expects some kind of a name of the form. So you can see that we have the ID, but his expectation is also the name. So I'm going to go and give a name here saying FRM1. Okay, now let us say that we have 10-15 validations here. At this moment we have only 2 actually, on these 2 input fields, and let us say that depending on if both of these validations are proper, I would like to go and enable and disable this add customer. So what I can do now is I can go and use this FRM1 name here, and I can say that $valid. So you can see here I'm saying here disable or enable this button depending on if this whole FRM1 is valid or not. So at this moment we have 2 text boxes on which we have decorated the required attribute. So if both of these required attributes are filled, then only this button will get enabled. So you can see here now my application is running, and you can see this button is disabled at this moment, and I will start filling the customer name and I'll start filling the customer code, and you can see that the add customer has got enabled, right? So if I go and delete this again, you can see that he has again got disabled. So you can see now how Angular is utilizing those HTML5 validation attributes and helping you to do validations, right? Now, because we are doing all the validations on the client side, we don't need this HTML.validation message for, right? So if you remember, right, in lab 8, we had put this, so we don't need this anymore because we are doing validations on the server side, but those are already streamed across, right? And at this moment, our interest is on the client side validation. And also what you can do is you can go ahead and you can do something as follows. You can go ahead and put some span tags and div tags, which can have the error message. For example, you can see here I put a span tag here in which I have a very simple error message here saying name is required, and this span tag will get visible true or visible false depending on if this FRM1's input elements are proper or not in terms of validation. For example, here you can see I'll go and change this. So you can see here this text box name is customer name. So I'm saying that okay, inside FRM1, if the customer name validation is proper, then only go and show this span tag. So in the same way I can do here something like this, Control C, and I'll say here Control V, I'll say customer code is required. Okay, customer code is required. So I can really go ahead and put some custom error messages there which can be enabled or made visible depending on condition, which I can get from Angular, and Angular internally uses the HTML5 validation attributes. One very important thing to remember here is that you cannot have a naming convention like this now, like customer.customer code. It should be a very plain naming convention like customer code or customer name. So in case you are saying dot, right, then Angular has a problem. Okay. So again, you can see here I have put one more span tag here, and this span tag will be made visible false or visible true depending on if the required validations are filled proper or not, right? And you can see here I'm saying that okay, this is valid. So if it is valid is true, then I am saying not. In other words, if it is true, I am saying false, because I would like to only show them when the validation is false. So when the validations is false, this becomes true, and the ng show is true, and the and the error is displayed. And if this is false, then this becomes true, and we would like to actually go and show the message, right? So it is more of a negation. Okay, so I'm almost there. So let us go ahead and run this application here. Let me reload this. So you can see the name is required, that is good, but as soon as I start filling the validation, the name goes off. You can see the customer code required is seen, but as soon as I fill the validation, the customer code has gone. And also you can see that the buttons are getting enabled and disabled depending on the validations, right? So that brings us to the end of lab 25, and we have more 5.5 hours still to go ahead. Okay, so the next video is on single page applications. Okay, so we have this concept of something called as SPA in MVC. So Mr. Sukesh Marla, is going to talk about something called as single page applications in the next 30 minutes. And we would like to get feedbacks from you. So please go to facebook.com/questpond and please go ahead and put your input saying that, okay, we liked your validation video, but we would like to see this, we would like to see that, right? At the end of the day, you guys are our customers. You people drive the industry. You are working on live projects. So you better know the pain points of Angular with MVC, right? So if you tell us, okay, include this in this project, we would like to include the same. If you see at this moment, what is happening is we have a project running parallelly. So we have this customer screen running parallelly on which we have put Angular, entity framework, we have put validations, etc. And side by side, we are also doing concepts like single page application, or error handling, right? So at side by side, we are also learning concepts as well. So we would like to get feedback from you so that we can add those new topics here, or probably if you feel that we are going slow, we are going fast, let us know, and we would like to improve on the same. Thank you so much.